it's hard to be a Christian in a country like this, where all of the resources we have for how to think about something as Christians tell us one thing, but it's very clear that we're going to do something else. And I was interested in whether there was anybody who had anything else to say. And so I started looking around, and there was this group called the Christian Peacemaker Teams. And for about 15 years, the Christian Peacemaker Teams had been getting in the way, they said. Getting in the way in conflict zones and practicing active nonviolence with their own bodies in the midst of places where extreme violence was happening. It was interesting. Here's kind of a third way between just war and pacifism. And I asked if they were in Iraq, and sure enough, they had a team that they were building up in Iraq. Well, my wife and I talked about this and prayed about it and said that we would send them a letter and tell them we were very encouraged by what they were doing, and if there was anything we could do to help, to let us know. We were 22 years old and had no training in any sort of peace action, and thought, maybe they'd like us to stuff some envelopes. We heard back from them, and they said, as a matter of fact, we're sending a team of people over to Baghdad in about 3 weeks. Would you like to join them? And we did. And we ended up leaving the United States the same day that George Bush said, 48 hours and the war is on, unless Saddam and all of his sons leave the country, which wasn't going to happen. So we landed in Amman, Jordan, and the next day the bombing started in Iraq. We went into Baghdad, really by a miracle. We got in and were able to visit with people who were incredibly welcoming. It was amazing. We were at that time the only Westerners on the streets in Baghdad, and everyone knew we were there with the peace team. And everyone we met said to us, "Thank you for being here. We love Americans. We do not like your government, but we love Americans." They were pretty good at distinguishing between a people and its government. They had been under a government they didn't like for quite a while. And we talked to so many people whose lives had been just racked for years. First by war with Iran, and then by the first Gulf War, and then by all those years of sanctions. The sanctions had just decimated Iraq for a decade, and here they were again, being attacked. And we heard people say things like, if this is democracy, we don't want it. If this is liberation, you can keep it. We heard some people who were angry. We visited the hospitals and met a woman who introduced us to her daughter, who was in the hospital bed, and who was pockmarked with these little sores all over her body. And it turned out that outside their house, a fragmentation bomb had exploded above the ground, and all these little pellets had gone out into the walls and into her skin. And it looked like she had measles, but in every one of those little things was a cube of metal. And the doctor told us that they had found that it was better to leave them in and just try to let the kids heal than to try to pick everyone out. And then the mother showed us a picture of her son, who had also been in the house and had been killed by the bombs. And we wept together, and we learned to say in Arabic, "Asif Jaded," which means "I'm sorry." That's all we could say, was "I'm sorry," and weep and lament with these folks who were hurting terribly.